Privyet! Welcome everybody to the Kudryavka podcast. I'm your host for today, Pepe, and with me today on this podcast is Aspirety, who is currently recovering from his smorgasbord of yesterday.
Hey guys, I'm letting Pepe do the hard work this time.
Where's your wafu, Aspi? I need to hear your wafu.
Wafu! There you go.
Very good.
I put all my energy into that one, just for you.
Thank you. I hope you save some energy for the actual podcast. Alright, next up is Grooven.
Hello, wafu.
That was also very good, wafu. I guess this is your second time with us in the Kazamatsuri podcast, right?
Yes, I was on the meal one before.
Okay, good to have you back. Alright, and lastly, and not the least, is Naoki Satin.
Woohoo!
Thank you. Wafu, everybody. Alright, so, I guess before we get started with all the meat of the podcast, Naoki, I believe you have a 30-second recap for all of us that you've been preparing since.
Yes, I do.
I'm excited. I was impressed by your previous 30-second recap one, so no pressure,
No pressure, kid, right?
Yeah, no pressure. Alright, whenever you're ready.
Yep. Kudryavka needs to save her motherland from an erupting civil war, because in Soviet Russia, ships drop from space. Armed with nothing but her wits and crippling self-deprecation, the sad lily departed to save her nation. Surprisingly, she fails, gets captured and chained up in a dark cave. Genius Riki then teleports the most useful tool he could think of over to Kud, a trashy piece of scrap metal that reminds her of just how hard she failed at everything. By channeling her reinforced depression, Kud fails at being chained up and escapes. Wafu.
I had to keep my laughs in, for I didn't even count how long that was. Brilliant, thank you.
You can always count on Naoki to deliver the 30-second recaps. Oh my god.
Glad you liked it.
Another classic has been born.
He was channeling his inner English dub Kud.
Hey, this is what I would have sounded like if I didn't try speaking without accent.
Oh,
really?
So it's all natural.
It's one of my native languages.
Alright, so overall impressions, I guess. Grooven, maybe?
Sure. I had read it a few years ago initially. It was different from the other routes because of the aspects that, it takes place half outside of the school. So I found that to be an interesting trait. Usually visual novels it's all, centered just in one place. So, yeah.
Right. Like, I've talked about this a lot, how, like, there's this big image of Little Busters as a sanctuary, and how they're kind of, like, insulating each other from the horrors of, like, the greater world. And this is a route where those horrors come full frontal assault on the Little Busters, and, it's just this small little group of friends trying to deal with a massive international conflict.
War and rebellion.
Yeah.
And it's just like, this is very real. It's like, it kind of like, a lot of people have criticized this route because it takes away the focus from the character drama, is what they say. I'll argue against that, but we'll get to that later. But the point is, like, I see what they're getting at, where, like, the focus of this route being about, like, politics and, like, war and famine and all that, it's very, very different to anything else in, like, even, like, Key. Like, this isn't really territory Key has gotten into much before. There's, like, I guess there's, like, Summer Route from Air is a little bit, but that's very different.
It's very archaic, rebellion kind of thing.
Closest I would say would be Planetarian with
Planetarian,
Right.
true.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. But yeah,
But that's
like,
more
this isn't, like,
post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, this isn't, especially in the context of Little Busters, this is very much a very different kind of story. And a lot of people feel like, well, why is this the conflict now? Why are we being forced into this situation which the characters can't possibly solve? Like, they're just little kids. Like, they're just trying to play baseball, have their own happiness, and now they have to stop a war? I imagine this would be very different if it was like, oh, comrade, we must fight against the rebels. And they all take up arms and... but no, that isn't what this route is about. And we'll get more into that later. But yeah, it is very different to what we're used to.
Yeah.
This is, despite all that, like this war and this rebellion is something that could be happening in a neighboring country that we don't realize ourselves. Anyway.
This is the kind of thing that's happening in the world everywhere. Like, we just
right.
kind of turn a blind eye to it. We go about our normal everyday happiness, pursuing our own interests. But there are people somewhere in the world dying right now. It's a fact of life. And I feel like this route is kind of... Yeah, I mean, it is. But this is the kind of route where it kind of like really brings those sort of concerns to a head. And like... I think that's fine to try and escape that and try to focus on your own lives. But this is the case in the Little Busters where this was something they couldn't ignore because Kud's family was involved. It became something very personal to her. And the whole group of like figuring out how to deal with it, their answer was, well, we can't. Just hang in there, Kud. That's basically all they could do. Anyway, I'm kind of going on a tangent here.
I guess that's...
Stop.
I guess that's almost like the second half.
That's for Aspie's impression. Anyway,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, I mean that's a good impression that you pointed out. As for me, I still think that Kud Drought had its flaws in terms of writing. That's something that I've been pretty vocal about ever since way back when. But one thing that Kud Drought never fails to do for me is it never fails to put a tear in my eye. It never fails to put a smile on my face at the ending when you see Kud return to the school with her beat up hat and her little cape and so. And Naoki, what are your impressions of the Kud route?
Well, actually, the Kud route was my favorite one among the pre-refrain routes. Simply due to... because the drama and the conflict itself, it's like in a whole different dimension. Like, as Aspie already said, these are things that the characters are absolutely powerless against. So then I often just... imagine myself in Ricky's shoes. Like, he can just sit there and listen, and sometimes he will get a call if he's lucky.
But otherwise, different. This is like a difference in the two versions too. Because like in the original release of Little Busters, all you really got of Kud's story was the phone call, where it's just like Ricky is waiting for like weeks, and I don't know if it was weeks, but days at least. And then, like, the only thing, like, he's just worrying about what's happening. He's just seeing the news happening. He's getting really worried. And he just gets a phone call from Kud where she's like, please help me, Ricky. I'm scared. It's like, oh, my God. Like,
in the
really
original version...
that feeling of powerlessness.
Yep. In the original version, we only see what Ricky sees.
Oh, okay.
Like, the entire thing. Only in the X parts did they add that material of seeing things from Kud's point of view as well.
Yeah, I wondered what they had changed, because I remember when they were announcing the EX and then Perfect Edition, I was wondering, what would be different, because they mentioned it would be one of the ones they would add content to, so I couldn't remember what I had read, but I felt that was something. But now that you're saying it, it's like, yeah.
Shirokitty's routes got quite a few adjustments in the EX release. And that was one of them. I don't know if it's for better or worse, but I'm at least glad they kept the scene with the phone call. Like, that still hits me really hard.
Right.
Yeah, it makes the situation more real, too.
But, that's not the only point of the route, too. Like, there's a lot of stuff that comes before that with the whole, like, most of the route is basically just studying with Kud, and so, like, the whole thing with Teva kind of really catches us by surprise.
That's actually what gets Kud and Ricky together in the first place, is because, hey, I want to study for the exams, and these exams are actually referenced in the previous routes, but in previous routes they're like, oh, I don't really need to take the exams.
Yeah.
But yeah, in Kud's route he does, because Kud wants to, improve herself. She wants to get better at English. She gets help from Ricky, and she gets help from the rest of the Little Busters.
Yeah, Kamari's surprisingly good.
Yeah, Kamari's very good at English.
Yeah.
I think that works well, because I know that Samiyana says knows a little bit of English.
That's right.
Yeah.
She's practiced it a bit, so it worked out well. It's
Her
hey, can you say some
pronunciation
English lines? They probably just ask the cast who can speak English. And you can help Kud. Your character can help Kud speak English. Yeah. But so yeah, why don't we talk a little bit about Kud's character? I know we talked a little bit about this in the common route, but I want to go back to that a little bit more, especially with Naoki here, because I know he has quite a bit to say on the topic.
Yeah.
Pepe, I'd like you to talk about general reception of Kud first.
Right. I did say this on the forum. This is the first sentence.
I'd say you made a great
US
point
class.
too. We'll have to work that in anyway.
I have to be open in that I like Kud. I'm not a lolicon, I'm sorry, but no, I think Kud is a really great character. No matter, despite all of the shit that people give her and all the shit that I've given her over the past years, I think that she, out of all the Little Busters characters, if you made me hang out with all of them, I think I'd have the most, well, at least with the girls, I'd have the most fun hanging out with Kud. If you include the guys, I think it'd be Masato, but anyway. that's another thing.
But yeah, I think this her route proves that she's more than just, lolicon bait, and she's has a bigger character than that.
I know Black Hayate brought up the point of this might be a bit of a conflict between the interests of the company, Visual Arts, versus the interests of Shirokiri, the route rider.
I think it was Aizen who first pointed it out, that maybe Shirokiri intended it to be a critique against the Minimoe trope. And yeah, we kind of went down.
Right, he was the one to point it out, and to that...
Said it. Sorry. Sorry, Aizen.
I mean, there was an answer to Aizen's post made by Helios Alpha. He said the very existence of Kud Wafter could be seen as proof that Key as a company only sees Kud as a trope.
Wafu.
Well, but then Pepe argued that Shiroki might not be of the same opinion.
Right,
Yeah.
and Hayate kind of expounded on that, saying that it's actually more complicated than all of us thought, right? And I think that's something that we, I guess, tend to forget, is that writers have a job, and sometimes they have to do that job. They have to sometimes they can't just write characters that they want to write. They have to write characters that people will like. And is Kud one of those characters that Shirokiri was forced to write? I don't know. But regardless, I think he or she, it's she, right? Is it?
Yeah, that sounds like a feminine name, yeah.
Yeah, well, they.
We don't really know anything about this person.
No, we
they're
do
pretty
not.
shrouded in mystery. It's probably a pen name for someone else, but
And
Yeah,
they
sure
disappeared. They disappeared off the face of the planet after Kud Wafter. Anyway, so anyway, I'm at least confident in saying that they did a pretty good job. That despite all of the tropism in Kud's character, I think they did a pretty good job in fleshing out that character to make them feel three-dimensional.
Yeah.
yeah. I think if you take Kud purely from her root, she's actually a very good character. It's when you start incorporating everything else that the perception becomes muddied with unnecessary bullshit.
Yeah.
Wafu.
Yeah.
But I will say there are some people that found the romance and fluff of this route a bit too overbearing, and I think
I
that's
was
also
one of them as well.
This was a route which had a lot more fluff and romance than any other. I know Kurigai had a bit, but this it felt just like the flirting process went on for most of the route, and just kind of doing cute things. was a lot of the route, and whether you like that or not, it's a big part of the route. So you're either gonna like it or be turned off. Like it's hard to ignore.
Yeah, I think it does a good job, because then you actually feel that they're a couple rather than just something superficial. I don't know, they came across as more believable than I would have, if it was anything less, just because of her character type and his character type.
I can't say any of it was forced.
Personally, I feel like their chemistry is, I don't know. It seems less strong than some of the other pairings.
Who are we to judge their love for one another? And here, this is me talking, the person who judges all of them. Anyway.
We've been doing this whole book club.
Yeah, the thing that bothered me was probably just about his hair sniffing. It's just a little.
That's not just good root. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
Haruka as well, but yeah, this one was just the most notable for me.
Riki, the hair sniffing devil.
Yeah. Like a couple of times, I get it, but it's just like, alright.
It's definitely not I don't feel like it's forced in any way. Like, I'm confident in saying that that kind of flirting is something Ricky and Kud would definitely do if they were a couple. It's just that I think as readers, that's something that I guess we could have had a little less of. Anyway.
Yeah. We didn't need as much as we got. It felt like it was fan service after a point, which is why I
am like a little repetitive. Like, just add different stuff, but
So I definitely feel like pacing issues of this route, definitely a thing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But that said, I think it might be time for Naoki to summon him to the stand to prepare his defense of Kud's character.
Well, first of all, Kud is someone I can relate to really well, because I've been in a similar position to her. I've left my home country and I moved to a different one, and then I simply became the weirdo for everyone, because everything about me was different. And so, especially when it comes to Kud, I get salty pretty fast. Especially when people say that Kud is a bad character due to superficial things like when they don't like her speaking quirks.
Right.
Or that she looks like a child.
Right.
Those aren't exactly related to her actual personality.
Yeah, true.
That's just a thing that she does. It's just a thing that she does, maybe to gain acceptance,
Right, and a lot of her traits have actually been explained properly in this road, if you were paying attention. For example, her weird English is her attempt at practicing English. She is trying to acquire a skill, and she gets a lot of shit for it, not only from characters in the game, but apparently also the readers.
Yeah, definitely.
Poor Kud. Yeah. Cut her some slack. She's trying her best.
Yeah.
And also there's her grandfather's involvement, who definitely is the foreigner who got the wrong idea about Japanese culture.
He is the prime example, yes. So what did y'all think of I guess you could call it the first half or the first core of Kud's route, where she starts studying, and I guess the big point of conflict in this part of the route is like how the rest of the school sees her and how they pick fun at her and they just make her a mascot. What do you guys think of that?
Well, I really liked how you could see her Japanese culture came into play with learning the English too. So it wasn't just all like, cute catchphrases, well, some of it, but just how others portrayed her and how like stereotypes and stuff.
It's definitely something that like a lot of people take her at face value.
Yeah.
And I personally believe that Kud as a character has very little self-confidence. So because of that, she has no choice but to ride with that perception of her. Like,
Right.
I think she does say that she does those things because that's how people view her, and that's how she'll be accepted. Like, if she's a foreigner who doesn't speak English, then they wouldn't accept her for who she is, Ricky excluded. But I guess one point here is like about the bullying, if you would call it. Like, a lot of the bullying that happens to Kud isn't really malicious with what they're trying to do. Like, a lot of people.
Yeah, true enough. It's much different than in like Kurogaya's route, where it's like it's more like a teasing sort of thing rather than being completely malicious.
Right.
It's just people telling her she's weird, and also treating her like a weirdo. It's in kind of an innocent way, but it does damage her sense of self-worth, because at one point she says, "Yeah, I am a weirdo, and it's natural for people to, treat me like this." Because it's natural for people to say these things when they see something weird.
Right, and I mean, that's something that I'll admit she herself doesn't. She doesn't make things better, I guess. She plays with that, and I guess the main conflict of this portion of the route is like Ricky notices that it starts to bother her.
Yeah.
And Masato is very insightful in that he says, "Why is it only bothering her now?" And she never really.
Oh yes.
All right. I mean, maybe it did bother her before, but not as much as it did now. And what do you guys think?
Wondering about like her mother, and then what she really wanted to be, and then how she's trying so hard yet she can't reach what she wants to be. So yeah, I'm just trying to think of how to word it.
That definitely plays into it, I'd say. Like that probably plays into her whole self-confidence issues, I think, and why she just accepts what people label her for.
Yeah.
Like,
well, since we've already mentioned Masato, I think it's worth pointing out that Masato is someone who can right now relate to Kud the most. Because
right.
Ricky's classmates are making a bet, right?
Right.
They're betting for or against Kud failing her tests.
her English
And
test,
they're
to be
making-
specifically.
Right, the English test. And they're making the same
The same bet.
the same bet about Masato
Except
on
for
all
Masato.
of his
Yeah,
subjects.
Masato is all of his tests.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they think he's gonna fail everything.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Masato.
So-
I would also bet against you. No offense.
So yeah,
Poor
in that
Masato.
regard, it's actually not that surprising that Masato can relate to Kud really well. And that he also understood really fast why Kud feels bothered by all this stuff right now.
Masakud OTP.
Yeah, I never really thought to bring him into the equation of comparison. Yeah.
Never underestimate the muscle.
Masato is, at least to his classmates, also a trope of the dumb tough guy, right? Despite all that, I think what Ricky eventually figures out is that the reason why it bothers Kud so much is because, well, she doesn't want Ricky to be affected. She doesn't want her being teased to affect Ricky. Like, she doesn't want Ricky to be caught up in, that teasing of her. She doesn't want
Yeah.
Ricky to be seen as the guy who's with the weird girl. Oh.
Right.
Yeah.
And what Ricky does next after he realizes this truth, I think that was really pretty damn cool from him. He just walked up to Kud and said, "Look, I don't care what the others think, I want to spend time with you."
Oh. He's
Right?
Nice.
That was
Yeah.
awesome.
nicely done. I mean, it's a very subtle way, but that kind of took away all of her worries. And like after that, you see that they're still betting against her, but they don't care anymore. They're happy.
Yeah.
Right.
And then she eventually gets good at English. Or at least passes.
Yeah, she passes thanks to the help of Komari, Ricky, everyone else. Oh, on that note, who did you guys pick for study partners?
Yeah.
Well, obviously I went with Mio.
Oh, But the problem is with
No,
Mio, you have
actually-
to go with Haruka.
I think I went with Komori.
That's actually a pretty good choice. As with all VNs, I chose everything, but my favorite is definitely my favorite is the one like, why don't you choose? When Ricky tells her that. Is that the new choice? Was it?
No, it's not.
Oh.
It's a choice that becomes available if she has a certain roommate.
Oh.
Which means in this
right.
case, Kanata has to be her roommate.
Oh, right. Okay.
Right. So yeah, if Kanata is her roommate, you get a different choice where you first try to ask her who she wants, and then she points very shyly and cutely at Ricky. Anyway. But then he lets her choose, and they end up studying with Kanata, which is a nice little thing. I think it's nicer that we see that after Haruka route because
true.
we start to unravel Kanata's character a bit.
Yeah.
Right. It's a very valuable experience to see how Kanata behaves around Kud,
Yeah.
because it also drives that point home that Kanata was actually using Kud as his substitute sister.
Yeah. That was something they kind of talked about in Haruka route, but we never really saw it in action until now, I think. Yeah. Thanks.
Right. I mean, Kanata, she is strict with Kud, but she does also keep her out of trouble. Like, it's that hidden kindness.
Right. And I mean, can you blame her? I feel like I do the same thing with Kud if I interacted with her. Anyway.
Yeah.
One thing I found that was interesting is how, like, all the English phrases that Kud is, like, studying during this route are vague foreshadowing for the events to come.
I did not notice that. What?
Neither did I.
Stuff like,
What?
let me bring up examples. One of the early ones was, like, talking about being a good gear. There was, like, some... I think they were, like, talking about the definition of the word gear. I think that was what it was. That was, like, the first thing that came up. Then there's, like...
Oh, right, and then she does into gear.
You get a lot of politics talk as well. There's, like, Prime Minister. I wish it was a peaceful world tomorrow.
Oh my! Why did I never notice that?
Oh, jeez.
Damn it, Aspie, that's...
Should have
Wow.
taken notes, man.
Yeah, man.
I
thought that was obvious. So, like,
It's just
everyone's
like, whoa.
I thought it was just Komari being, I wish it was a peaceful world. Nope.
No, the foreshadowing wasn't about washing the world, unfortunately.
Alright, okay.
Well, maybe it was about washing the world with muscle.
Oh yeah, the muscle route
Alright,
happens in this
right.
one, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Oh,
during
yeah.
the studying, if you play enough with Masato, and you choose Masato as your study partner, and then he comes
Oh, yeah.
in and gives you a choice of physics or muscle. There's only one real choice that you can make at this point, and I'm sure you all made the right choice, right?
I mean, I didn't get that scene. I think you need to play with Masato enough during the common route for it to trigger.
Yeah, you need to play with Masato at like 5 times or 4 times. I don't remember.
I think that happened for me. That was awesome.
Basically, there's 2 variations of this. The first one is the one that we get in the original Little Busters, and it is what it is. I'm not going to spoil it. But there is a second version that was released with EX, and to get that, I believe you have to finish Refrain first and then come back to this scene, and you'll get more
Nani?
stuff. So I recommend coming back to that one later on.
I'll do that later today. Yeah.
Yeah. the extended cut of the muscle sensation. Before we get too much further, I want to talk about common route stuff that might have come up in this playthrough. I'm trying to think what there was left. We talked about Kick the Can was last route.
Yeah.
We talked
The
about
puppet show, was it?
We talked. Oh yeah, that's right. in this playthrough, you can get the puppet show. Which,
the puppet show! I love the puppet show.
Oh yeah.
Quite a funny scene. I particularly love like Mio's acting out
Voices?
the
Yeah.
scene.
Her alien. Oh my god, that's so creepy.
Everyone is absolutely baffled. Like,
Mio's
did she
acting
do that?
skill,
Was
which
that
is
her?
like-
I
Yeah,
think
it's
it
just like-
was.
which is so good because that ties in so well to the events of her route. Oh my god.
Did they make the puppet show actually happen in the anime?
Yeah, I
think
They
yeah.
did, but Mio was not involved. It was
Oh.
just a Ricky and Rin thing.
And
Meh.
Komari with her
Unfortunately.
cute puppets. She had cute
Aw.
puppets.
Yeah.
It should have been everybody. Everybody.
No, they did have the thing where Mio like at least like
Oh,
did
okay.
the acting.
I can't remember.
So yes, sir.
Sir, yes, sir.
That was really good. Also, like, this was probably for many people the first time that they would have beaten the baseball game. So that's,
Or not
that's
yet.
quite an accomplishment.
I usually just
Um,
turn off that option.
Oh.
I don't know, maybe not, but I think it's what's steadily becoming apparent is that with each playthrough, the skills of the characters are going to be stronger. Basically, what you end up finding is with each route you complete, that character's stats will get a permanent increase on future playthroughs.
Oh, that's
And it's also worth noting that Riki and Rin's stats increase on every playthrough.
Oh.
So it explains why early on you have no chance of fighting against Sasami, but then in subsequent playthroughs it
Okay, that
becomes
part.
easier and easier.
cool. That
You
makes
suddenly
sense.
start
Okay.
winning and you don't know why. And you
Yeah.
suddenly start
Yeah.
getting kinky things from Sasami for some reason.
And then of course there's like the unknown life form quest, which requires
Oh,
Rin to
right.
be really buff to have a chance.
Yeah.
I freaking love that thing, the whole
makes
thing
sense.
about like
I finally
The,
finished that in my
the
playthrough.
biologically engineered creature.
Hell yeah.
Biotanaka.
Biotanaka with these bio cookies or whatever. And it turns out it was like Kyosuke's friend. Like the bird was like Kyosuke's friend from Hokkaido.
Or the dog or the
It's
bear.
really cheesy.
He's just, yeah.
and just like if
Kyosuke
you-
is just, he's randomly taking in endangered species
Oh,
and
yeah.
bringing them to school.
yeah.
Like,
they
what the
just-
hell,
they-
Kyosuke? How did you even do that?
They just follow him to school. He doesn't bring them in.
I wish
If
he had
I
a
were an
surprise.
endangered species, I'd follow Kyosuke to school. I don't know about you.
Good
Yeah.
point.
I don't think Biotanaka was in the anime.
I don't remember. I don't
Was he? I mean, I do remember Matt Suzuki,
Matt
but
Suzuki
not
was.
the Biotanaka.
Yeah, I don't think he was. Anyway, but yeah, like there's lots of different endings depending on like there's 4 battles you got to go through with this thing, and it's
Oh
pretty
yeah, that's
intense.
right. Yeah.
Was it 4?
There's a
Okay,
bunch of
yeah.
different endings depending on when you lose. Like the ultimate good ending is like you inject it with the serum and it returns to a normal bird and it flies away into the distance and
Oh.
Kyosuke is happy. There's also a bad
dang.
end where like
Okay.
you fail to inject it and then it's like, don't worry, Riki or Rin. It's like the Darkness executives have swept it all under the rug. It's like
Ooh.
the hell are the Darkness executives?
Who are the darkness executives?
It's just whatever, Kyosuke, whatever Biotanaka.
They
I'll take your
deal.
word
They
for it.
just deal with problems that normal people can't
It's
solve.
like the Men in Black of the Little Busters school.
That's awesome.
It's so weird. Love that little subplot.
I totally don't think I got all those endings.
No, it's pretty cool. And yeah, I guess like this is like our last playthrough of Common before we get to like refrain stuff. So
Oh, I guess
you-
Rin
you
2
hope-
counts. We're still have to gonna play through common for that.
that's what I mean. There's one more
Oh.
after this. This is like the last one before that.
Okay.
But yeah, it's getting sad that we're gonna have to part with all this soon. Boo. Anyway, getting back to Kudzuru. Yeah, I want to talk about the body painting. That's definitely an interesting scene that kind of comes
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, I even kind of like looked about because I was like, is this spaced off with something or? But yeah, it was really nice reflection of like the culture they've made up for her. Because I even was just for a few moments was like, is this a real country? So
right. They do a really good job of like establishing Tevuan culture.
Yeah, so I just had to look it up because I was like, it's me. Could be some little tiny place I don't know about. But yeah,
it could be like based on a thing.
Yeah.
Like, does anybody know about this? Did anybody like find any real world equivalents?
I mean, I did a quick search, but I didn't find anything.
No.
Try again.
I didn't find anything either.
I guess
at any rate, like, I think the whole point about like drawing on each other as like a sort of intimate way of connecting two people, very cool stuff. And it serves for a little bit of fantastical, I guess. It corresponds well to what happens later in the route, where they're actually able to form that spiritual connection and do magic.
Yeah.
But what were the shapes that they were painting on each other? I know like Ricky was like painting spirals or something.
Yeah.
Right. Ricky was painting spirals. Kud was painting on Ricky something like a tree and something.
But also something like a gear.
Yeah.
And she called it the Strugatsky Special. In other words, something originating from her family.
Oh.
Strugatsky Special sounds like either like a really fancy dish or a really fancy wrestling move.
Is there any etymology behind this name that might be like worth noting?
None that I'm aware of.
Strugatska.
I wonder if that's like Strutskaya means like whatever it's called, means like gear or something, because that'd be cool. Because I know like Riki can like be tree, can't it? Like key is tree. I don't know.
Oh, true enough.
Yeah,
right. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's why she makes a tree. Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
Is that character in his name?
Yeah, it is. The key in Ricky is tree.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember what the re is.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that obvious?
No. But yeah, I don't know. It was a cute scene. I liked that a lot more than all the other shenanigans. I think Kura and Riki like fucking in the school at night was terrible. It should have been in the game.
They didn't explicitly fuck. It's not in this version.
They totally did.
I think it was like a fade to black, wasn't it?
Nope, they did not.
And like the following scenes, like Kud is like really like nervous and shit and blushy and shit. It's like, God.
Come on, like you
the
would get
strikes
nervous
again.
after.
So hilarious.
Well, she did undress.
No, I think that was after. Anyway, whatever. Right.
But I think the scene like the body painting was a lot more tasteful.
Right.
Yeah, it was tasteful
intimacy.
and like a different level of intimacy, like without going that route.
Yeah,
Some people,
I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
Some people might have found it uncomfortable, inappropriate, but I thought, like you guys, I thought it was very sweet. I thought it added more dimension to Kud's character, and that's something like.
But I tell you what.
Yeah.
This scene makes no sense in the anime.
Yeah.
In the anime, Kud just happens to be doing it. Like, oh, Riki, you're here. Why don't you paint on my body for me?
Thank you, anime, for retconning all the romance.
Right.
So stupid.
Okay, so putting the anime aside,
right.
Sorry.
Continue now.
It is a ritual from a foreign country that looks pretty exotic to us, especially Japanese people. But it is what it is. It looks exotic, but it's not all that strange. It's just a piece of culture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it is new to us, therefore we kind of find it weird.
Right.
But it's not that hard to accept, right?
Right. I think maybe a lot of readers might have, failed to accept it as a part of a different culture. Maybe.
Yeah, I think that was the purpose of it, was to, you know, have a romance base and then yet have a culture influence.
Shirokiri is surprisingly perceptive about this kind of thing, because that's not something that you really see much from, especially Japanese media. As much as I hate to say it, Japanese people are generally close-minded about, you know, cultural nuances.
Yeah, sure enough.
Yeah, no, I'm quite a fan of Shirokiri's writing up to this. I think reading Haruka and Kud back to back was a very good decision for me. Like, I did it all within 48 hours. I just did them one for another.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And they complement each other so well.
Oh,
like,
true, yeah. She appears.
They are sister roots, absolutely. If you read Haruka's root and you go back from now, you'll notice that Kud's root is still happening in the middle of Haruka's root.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just, we don't really see it.
You see Kud going to the garbage bin to throw away something.
Yeah.
And you see you see Kud like basically consoling Haruka and was it Kanata? I guess both, on the point of like
she did console Kanata. And also, if you choose Kanata as Kud's roommate in Haruka's route, you see Kanata throwing out the grey box.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And, you know, you got the point of, like, she's consoling Haruka and Kanata to not take their family for granted because they could be gone someday. And that's like, oh.
Well, I wonder why.
Yeah. Well, I wonder why. I'll just leave it at that.
So
I love how connected these roots are. There's like a lot of similar messages as well. Like the whole that there's no evil ones message ties over to this root as well.
Never thought of that. Like, same
I think
writer.
I think that's a point you really wanted to bring up, Aspie. So why don't we get into that?
Oh man, going into this again.
Not too much, but
this is something I haven't fully developed because this quote comes up a few times in different contexts. But like I said in the Haruka Root podcast, I think the definition of evil ones is very much, it's a kind of thing that's open to interpretation. Do we interpret an evil one as someone who does evil, or do we determine an evil one as someone who is
blamed
determined evil?
Oh,
blamed for evil, like the scapegoat. Because we have in Haruka's Root the whole point of like all the family of her family was like blaming her as the evil one, the bane of the family that does the cause of everything wrong. In Kud's Root, we have a similar sort of dynamic where all the people of Tevoa are turning to her and calling her the evil one, the cursed one, that's responsible for all these horrible things happening. She's fulfilling the same role as Haruka here. And then there's like the other definition of like malice and stuff, which I think is more relevant when Kud is talking about the bullies. But yeah, it's important to realize there the kind of parallels that Shirokiri is drawing between these characters who take up the role of the horrible cursed one that's causing all this misfortune.
It even ties
treat that.
Even ties subtly into Mio's route, where it's the whole good intentions versus bad intentions kind of thing.
Yeah. Anyway, it's not a big point I want to draw too much attention to.
It's a nice thing that Shirokiri added.
There's lots of stuff like that in this route if you keep your eyes open. Lots of connections.
Right. The two general messages of the roots are connected, and if you put them together, they form a bigger, more interesting. I'm just saying you can combine those two, and they will form a new one. It's pretty simple actually. In Haruka's root, Haruka learns that you don't have to blame someone.
Right.
Basically, don't blame others.
Okay.
For bad stuff happening. In Kud's root, Kud learns to not blame herself.
Right.
Because she does that a lot. She blames herself for the catastrophe. She blames herself for
being teased.
For being teased, right. It's her fault for being weird. It's what she truly believes. And she learns not to do that in the end. So if you put it together, you receive the message of you're not supposed to blame anyone. Not others, not yourself.
Oh.
If you want to handle a bad situation properly, you're not supposed to assign blame.
Address the problem, not the people.
Right. And that's probably something that many people forget, you know. Because when they find someone to blame, they can just push that problem onto others.
Yeah.
I think there's a subtle thing.
To the mic more.
There's a subtle line that I noticed. Like, was this from Good Root? Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like, isn't it easy to just say, "Hang in there"? It's like the most.
Yeah, that's Good Root.
It's the most irresponsible thing you can say, because it's like you're just throwing on your problems onto that other person because you don't know how to solve them.
Yeah.
These characters were completely powerless to help Good. That's all they could do.
Right.
It is an admission of powerlessness, but also good intentions.
So the tale of the bat that couldn't find a place to belong. Was it a bird or was it a beast? And one nice little bat tried to stir up trouble for their friend the platypus, who could also not fit in as a bird or a beast.
I'm just gonna have this headcanon now that Fruit Bat Factory was founded because of this.
I don't think what's his name is on it anymore.
We'll have to ask Phoebus.
Yeah, Phoebus. Phoebus isn't online anymore anyway. Right. So that's an interesting thing that places Good in a very weird situation. She sees herself as the bat. She sees herself as the creature who would sacrifice their own belongingness just so they can help, their friend feel like they belong. So because at the end of the story, the bat is left alone. Although that is kind of subverted by Komari, isn't it? I think Komari comes in sometime later in the route to kind of clarify that that's not how it really ended or something like that. I forgot.
Well, actually, Komari said she's not done with it.
Right.
And then that she's going to write a different ending, but she did not finish the ending before Good departed.
Right, which is unfortunate.
Komari route tie-in.
Stories.
Endings.
But I think.
But she did say that she wrote a different story, and I'm not sure if. I'm not entirely sure if Good did read that story, but that story was about a dog that rode a star and then came back.
Oh yeah, I wonder who the dog could be.
Wafu.
The fact that the dog came back is interesting, but we'll get into that later.
Right. Yeah, it's a little subtle. It's a little subtle point that they put in so that you could kind of piece in how Good feels about herself.
Right. So basically, Good knows she doesn't belong to either side, but she also knows that she is kind of in a special position and that she can do something to change the situation. And what she chooses to do is to sacrifice herself for the well-being of others, and she thinks that's fine.
In the end, isn't it Ricky who chose for her?
Yeah. The plane.
Or is it? Right.
Good isn't a good route from a feminist perspective.
Good.
Well, depends on because it's. Yeah.
Well, actually, Ricky simply told her to do what she actually wanted to do.
Yeah.
Not what she thought her obligation was. And after receiving that final push, she did say out loud what it was she wanted.
Right. In the end, that's something that she wanted. Of course, you can't really go for what you want all the time, because sometimes you want both. There's a saying in my country that I hate. It makes more sense in the local language because it rhymes in local language. But it's like, if you want it, you'll make a way. If you don't want it, you'll make a reason. And I hate that saying because I know it's absolutely not true, because this is a prime example. we can't always go for what we want because there are always situations that we have to, deal with before we go for what we want. Anyway.
Right.
That's an interesting saying.
Yeah.
Pag gusto may paraan, pag ayaw may dahilan.
Though it should have been like a decision of decide for yourself.
Anyway.
Anyway. Well, yeah. In the end, we realized that that's like with the whole issue of Tevua and the plane ticket and Kud going there. Like, I think a lot of people find it absolutely ridiculous that you're letting Kud go into that situation, and I think that's valid. That
my first choice was to not let her go.
Yeah, I mean, I think anyone in their right mind, if it was, an actual real person we're talking about, I think...
Oh, yeah, no kidding.
It wouldn't have been a good idea to actually, let her go there. But I think in hindsight, that was something she needed to do to learn something about herself. Because if she just stayed there, she wouldn't grow, she wouldn't learn.
Yeah. And what happens when you make her stay?
Oh, wow.
Right. Yeah. The VN makes you feel really, really guilty about it.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Like,
It
even...
was... yeah, I'll let you go first.
I mean, even this ending is so... it's so hard to swallow, right?
Yeah.
It's... I'm not sure if I can call it emotional, but I guess I can. Because it suddenly hits you and all you feel is powerlessness and that you have messed up.
Yeah.
And now you did something really terrible to this fragile little girl, and she may never recover.
Yeah.
Why you
My
do
biggest
this to
issue
me?
was how they presented it, because no one would show that on national news, and then they were playing it in the school.
Oh right, the what actually does happen, the execution.
What? Yeah.
Maybe the internet might have made more sense.
Yeah. Or like, here, we mailed you like a DVD and whatever or something, or
I mean, I hate
like webcam thing.
I hate to bring politics into it, but isn't that exactly what happened like last year or a few years back with ISIS? I mean, you say it's ridiculous. A lot of people say it's ridiculous to broadcast that, but that kind of happened recently,
they do show them, but just not on They would just show like a piece of it, like over here anyways. They like substantially edit.
Well, that's the thing. I think it was heavily implied that this was live.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
So
like,
they didn't.
They wouldn't.
They didn't even know what would happen.
Yeah, that's how I interpret that scene personally. And they'll probably like cut the broadcast.
Anyway, it even though it's kind of ridiculous, it really hammers in how volatile the situation in Tevua was back then, and why Kud felt that she really, really had to go.
I think some people have experienced tonal whiplash with this scene.
Yeah.
It was a bit too hardcore all of a sudden. But I don't agree with that.
Maybe.
I think scenes like this are very much part of the experience of Little Busters. Bad shit happens.
Right, and it could happen at any time. Sometimes there is foreshadowing, and sometimes it just hits you out of nowhere. And suddenly all this, your everyday life, the way you think it is, and the way you wish it to continue, suddenly it just shatters.
There is no foreshadowing for the real life.
I think I have the quote. A peaceful everyday life hides its fragility. Fear and violence aren't something just in another world, completely unrelated to us. If a disaster happens, we can't change it. But as long as we small gears are linked together, we can keep moving forward, even if it's only one small step. I don't know if Kyosuke said that or Riki, but
I think Riki said that.
I think it was Riki, because he's talking about gears and stuff. But yeah, I think that's one of the big messages of this route. It's not the only message, but I think it works well in the broader context of Little Busters. Yeah, I think it's a very valid part of the story.
I think I agree with that. Yeah.
Sanctuary and shit, you know.
Yeah.
Working together, get through the hard times, because bad shit happens, and not everything will be a picturesque, you know, slice of life story where nothing can possibly go wrong, unless you're reading the Little Busters Yonkama. Anyway, I'm going on so many tangents. But why don't we talk a little bit more about the central conflict of this route? I think it's about time to start talking about that.
Right. So, I think the biggest and most important scene, the climax of this whole route, is Kud in the dungeon, and why she is there, and what she feels while she is there. And like personally, I thought the most, like, the dungeon itself, like everything that she thinks about in the dungeon is self-deprecation, her blaming herself. It's her saying that, oh, this happened to me because I wasn't there for my family, or because I wasn't able to become the great person that I could have become. And
right, and
yeah,
she also says a weakling like me should be just chained up and dropped.
Right. And man, isn't that painful?
That hits you pretty hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I took this scene as very literal, but a lot of people, now that I'm reading through the forums, are saying, oh, it's symbolic. But, you know, reading this on my own, I had never come to the assumption of it being symbolism.
Well, I feel like if we need to approach this from a critical lens of literature here. The fact that we have a scene which breaks all laws of reality, in which Riki is able to telepathically communicate with Kud on the other side of the world and transport a little gear thing to her hand, which is seemingly trash, and then Kud throws it on the ground, and the chains above her rust and shatter into a billion pieces. We can't explain this with conventional logic here, right? This isn't.
Yeah, true enough.
This isn't something we should be taking at face value. That's what this is saying. If you take it at face value, you're just ignoring the whole point, because then it's just nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. So we gotta have a little bit of faith in the author here that they're actually trying to tell us something by showing us this, and that's what leads us to the interpretation that maybe this is more metaphorical.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah, I like the way you put it. So, I guess we're on the same page that it's metaphorical, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That does
Well,
make
I
sense.
won't necessarily agree, but I don't disagree either.
Do you believe
point
Riki
is-
is an X-Man?
No.
No, I don't believe so. But whether Riki is an X-Men or not is not the point of this. The point is that we're not supposed to focus on the problem of Kud being in mortal danger, even
There
though
we go.
we automatically assume that this is the big problem, because
Right.
logically it is. However, in this route, the bigger problem is that Kud is going to die, and she thinks that's fine, that she deserves it,
Right.
that she needs to
Right.
be punished.
And that's
while-
what Riki helps make her realize that she's wrong. Anyway.
Right. The chains have been shattered rather quickly, but what did take time was convincing Kud that she should live on, that she should do what she thinks. Not what she thinks she's obligated to, but what she wants to do. That it's fine not to blame herself for everything, which she couldn't have influenced anyway.
That's a very beautiful way of saying it.
You can't change the world, but you can change yourself.
Aspie, we'll get back into that in like 2 or 3 years from now. I know.
We haven't even mentioned Laika, though.
Oh yeah, the meanings behind the names as well, like of her dogs too.
Right. Let me take care of that. So, maybe some of you have heard about it in your history lessons. During the Cold War, the conflict between the USA and the Soviet Union, there was a thing called the space race. Those two superpowers have competed over who would be the first to control space, who would be the first one to send out something into space. And so this whole Sputnik thing happened. Sputnik means something akin to a moon, something that follows a planet around.
Okay.
The first Sputnik was just a piece of metal with very primitive measurement instruments that sent out a signal transmitting whatever it measured. Sputnik 2 was a rocket where they put a living being into. And that being was the dog Laika. Laika had several nicknames, one of which was Kudryavka.
Ho ho ho!
Gasp.
Whoa.
Right. And not. It was, of course, intentional because the. I am kind of changing topics here from in-game and historical. But what I mean to say is that all these Tabua people actually admired those dogs that were used for the Sputnik experiments. And they intentionally named Kudryavka that way.
Right. And she herself started believing that. She herself started believing
Yes.
she should be like that dog.
She started identifying with her.
The stories of Laika are very interesting in how they've been transmitted through culture, right? Because when I was a kid, I learned about this, and the stories are very like, it paints a sort of heroic image of a dog that's the first creature in space, and it's like, you know, a frontier, what's the word, a trailblazer, you know, into the unknown, you know, like as a hero that paved the way for space travel in the future.
Right.
But they usually leave out the part where Laika was like chained up into that, so she couldn't move, and she died of stress. Like, it was just like the most horrifying thing for this poor creature, and she just ended up dying out in space. And they never talk about that part. Because it's
overheating?
It was from stress and overheating. Basically, first of all, they change her up so that she couldn't move too much. They put sensors onto her so they could measure all kinds of stuff, because that was the point of the experiment. The rocket itself was not meant to land safely. They didn't have that technology. When they sent her up into space, they knew she wouldn't come back alive.
Poor dog.
Aww. However, she died way faster than they expected her to, because due to a technical failure, the heat inside the rocket was too much. Well, overall, the entire Sputnik 2 project was a pretty sloppy job because it was rushed. They wanted it to happen on a certain day, a certain anniversary. So they didn't prepare as much as they wanted to.
So, bound by the shackles of capitalism.
No, it wasn't capitalism.
No, it wasn't. But like this whole like,
it was anti-capitalism.
It was basically this political greed, right? They wanted to be the first in space, and they were sacrificing dogs to get there. You know, it kind of like it makes me think of how Kud herself is a victim of society and how, of all these politics well beyond her control.
Right, and she does say that, like, the dog, Macklemore was mentioning it, the dog that was selfishly sent into space to die for the sake of the people. And she kind of, because of her namesake, I feel that she wanted to become like that dog, you know?
Right. The interesting thing is, over the course of the routes, several people make references to the original Laika. One of them is Kanata. Kanata although Kanata is just being vague. Like, when they get the bad news from Kud, she walks up to Riki and basically tells him to man up. And she also says to him something akin to, "You don't want this to become a story of the poor Kudryavka who was sent to her death without a return ticket, right? So man up and make things better." And then there's Mio, who actually goes into detail with this. Mio realized that Kud identified with the historical Laika. Which also means she knows that Kud would be willing to sacrifice herself. However, Mio also discovered the connection that the original Laika, first of all, she was a stray cat. She was not a cat. I'm way too sleepy. She was a stray dog, and she was a mixed breed. But even though she was a mixed breed, she surpassed all the other dog candidates for Sputnik 2, and she was selected. So Mio concluded that probably her parents wanted to include that message in Kudryavka's name, that she was a mixed breed, but she surpassed the other candidates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's also, of course, Belka and Strelka.
Right.
Which are other dogs that were sent into space.
They were the next Sputnik, wasn't it?
That's right. They were part of the Sputnik 5 project. This is where they sent those two dogs, and also several other animals and some plants. And that was the first rocket with living creatures inside that returned and landed safely, meaning Belka and Strelka have survived that flight. And the historical Strelka also actually got pregnant after that. And interestingly enough, one of her puppies has been given as a present to the US president's daughter at that time.
Oh, interesting.
I would also like to mention the Sputnik 9 project, which was also completed successfully. One passenger on that Sputnik 9 rocket was a dog named Chernushka. And this is also a name used in Kud's route.
What name would that be referring to, Pepe?
I don't know, but it sure does sound similar to something we've seen on a piece of metal. Right. Anyway, so if we remember actually what Kud was trying to throw out before she left, Riki finds a dog tag and he can't read it. I know a bit. Well, I can read Cyrillic, but I can't really read Russian. So I kind of figured out that it was trying to say Chernushka, which Chernushka and Strugatskaya, which apparently was Kudryavka's original Russian name, wasn't it?
Right.
Right.
Wait,
she does mention that when they paint on each other. What?
No.
Or was it her
wait.
mother's maiden name? Her mother's last name? I don't remember.
Her mother's name.
Her mother's name, yeah.
Alright, right.
Also,
That's Strugatskaya?
the only name we're given for Kud's mother in this route is Cherusha.
Yeah, Cherusha.
Right. And that's supposed... I think it is supposed to be just an abbreviation or a kind of nickname referring to the original full name, which is Chernushka.
Mm-hmm. Of course, like with the connection there is Strugatskaya.
Strugatskaya is their family name, right?
Yeah, so we already know that the dog tag belongs to someone in Kud's family. It's like, it just makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of names, Kud's full Russian name is Kudryavka Anatolievna Strugatskaya. Kudryavka is her first name, Strugatskaya is her family name, and that middle name is the so-called father's name. You get your father's first name as your middle name.
Oh.
This means that her father's first name is Anatoly. And that's actually pretty much everything we know about him. His name is Anatoly Strugatsky. We don't know what his middle name is. But we also know his nickname, which is Tolya. It's simply a nickname derived from his original name. He is mentioned in the very last scene, which we will talk about at a later time.
Right.
So, Kud's grandpa's name is Ivan Sergeyevich Strugatsky. Again, Ivan is his first name, Sergey would be his father's name, and Strugatsky is then the family name.
The family name, right.
And as we
already
talked about mentioned,
him much yet?
He's the foreigner who gets the wrong idea.
Right. He's also the one who took care of Kud.
Good, yeah.
Because her parents could not. They had to focus on their rocket science.
I think his role in the story is very interesting because it seems to be implied that he's opposed to Kud's parents' vocation.
Right. Kud did mention while she was I'm not sure where she said it, but she said that her grandpa was kind of opposed to the whole thing, partly due to some of his old friends who supposedly disappeared. And he also objected to the very idea of calling the new project Sputnik as well, and for assigning for using those dog names again, those dogs who were used in experiments.
And I feel like you could even extrapolate this further and suppose that the way that what was his name, Ivan? How he so rigidly tried to indoctrinate Kud with the Japanese values and the Japanese language was his way of rebelling against her other heritage.
Right. It could be argued
trying to keep her away from it.
That him teaching her Japanese was him putting a hurdle into his way, into Kudryavka's way of becoming an astronaut. Because as Kudryavka is, she has to balance 3 kinds of languages with 3 different alphabets, which she obviously fails at.
Yeah, it's a lot to learn.
Especially for a girl at her age.
Now, this kind of implies that there's been some, tragedy that's happened in the past that's caused the grandpa to feel this way about the whole, astronaut thing. That he's probably lost some friends from. Maybe this has something to do with the box of stuff that Kud has.
Oh, true enough.
Right. So, the
what
box
are the contents of the box?
It has a dog tag, which kind of implied to belong to her mom. It has a piece of junk, which looks like a gear, and it has pictures of her family, along with other things. Does anyone else remember?
It also has a mug with that depicts a special kind of sky.
Okay.
And also I think it was a postcard that depicts a picture of the sky as seen from this sky 50 nautical miles away.
Yeah,
right.
The Southern Cross.
Right. Not necessarily that, but it contains a note from Kud's mother where she says, let's watch it together, or something like that.
So there's lots of building blocks here to suppose about what might have been going through Kud's head during this whole thing. I remember the anime was actually very generous here, and it gave us some extra detail about like Kud's studies and how her process of becoming, studying to be an astronaut.
That was her intent in studying English. Yeah. The VN also did say it, like one of the requirements for being an astronaut is you have to be good at English because
you have to be good at both English and Russian.
But she flunked out, right? She studied, but she flunked out, and that's when she kind of fled to Japan to have a normal high school education.
Well, the way Kud explained it is that she fled from that school because she felt completely disconnected from her mother, to the point where she doubted if she was actually her real daughter. Due to the disparity in their skill.
Because her mom is obviously amazing, right? She's an astronaut.
Yes.
It's Ricky secretly in the future.
Yeah.
As you guys said, a lot of this builds up to her insecurity, her mom, her studies, even what she sees in that box of hers. Like, I personally believe that the reason why she wants to throw away that box is because
get Ricky
she
to throw
believes.
It away.
Well, get Ricky to throw it away.
You throw this away from me.
She can. She basically can throw it out by herself.
She could.
She asked Ricky to do that.
I guess. Well, the way I see it, at least, is that was kind of like her aspirations of becoming an astronaut, of living up to her mother's not legacy, but well, something like that, to her mother's glory, and her wanting
just to be like her.
Yeah. And her wanting to throw away that box, or at least wanting to let Ricky throw it away, is that I think she wanted to, reject that part of her, because she believed that she would never obtain it, And I guess she wanted Ricky to do it, or as we see in Haruka's route, she wanted Kaneda to do it. She wanted someone else to, nail her coffin down for her, if you excuse the analogy. Like,
yeah, that makes sense.
Like, symbolically, she wanted someone else to say that, hey, you don't have to do this. You can just forget about it, and
Yeah, or even like a
forget
piece
about
of
your
her.
family.
She does tend to do that several times, like looking for approval of others before actually making a big decision. Like, maybe she may be expecting someone to forgive her. For a failure she may not be able to forgive herself for.
Yeah.
And well, that's again, it ties into her insecurity, which I feel at the end Ricky is able to convince her that even after all is said and done, after she's sacrificed enough, she can go back. There's still something worth going back to, and in the VN, that even if that thing is Ricky and that thing is your partner, he was very suave about how he said it. Anyway, because even after that, even if you fail, even if you don't live up to whatever expectation the world has for you, you still have a reason to live. There's still something, there's still something more important than you. Something that you
Shout
want
out to Yoshino Root from Clannad.
Hey, how did I forget that? My God.
Same message.
Yeah, I think that's essentially what convinces Kud to free herself of her shackles of insecurity. That's how I see it, at least.
It's interesting. I never really thought about with the analogy to the chains. It's what you were mentioning with Laika. I never really put the two together.
Neither did I until just a moment ago. Thanks, Naoki. Didn't really think about that one.
Yeah.
No problem.
So after she frees herself from her shackles, she escapes and returns, and we're given this very heartwarming reunion, which, by the way, again, never fails to put a tear in my eye. With the BGM that we also don't see in the OST. Anyway, that aside, we get a brand new epilogue, which did not appear in the vanilla Little Busters edition. I guess this would be news for you, Grooven.
Yeah. It's been so long since the original, so it's almost like they're kind of blending together.
Right. And what happens there is we get a recording from Kud's mother telling her lots of things. It's you get to see more about Kud's mom, who we always just see as this amazing astronaut
unreachable
woman. Unreachable ideal. And we see her playing around, and she's just another person, you know.
The scene in the anime, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. Can see what she looks like.
Was that in the anime? Was that recording in the anime?
I'm pretty sure it was.
Oh my. So they animated something which was actually from
the Kudra in the anime is very good.
Well, alright then. I guess we have seen it before. Anyway.
Also, shout outs to Kud's mom just being Riki.
Riki in the future. And well, personally, I love the epilogue because it really solidifies the message that Riki was trying to tell Kud, that being a gear is not, finding your place in society, finding a place where you could just be part of the machine that keeps the world running, so to say. That's not what being a gear is about. Being a gear is about finding what's important to you and making that work in this world. And well, she does say it very blatantly, but essentially stop living up to society's expectations and find what you really want to do,
Yeah.
And I hope people were able to take that.
I like how it's left kind of ambiguous in the good ending whether her mother actually lived or not.
Yeah. Yeah, I wondered that too. I was like, Mom, was she alive? I don't know.
I mean, the recording is very much a past thing, so it doesn't prove anything.
Right.
In the bad end, obviously, she's...
The thing is, Kud was in the possession of the recording even before this whole mess started.
Right, she was.
So,
but she was afraid to watch it, yeah.
Right. She was so caught up in her own regrets and her own fears that she didn't look into this valuable piece of evidence that could have relieved her of a lot of her fears.
What a sad puppy.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, like, Kud is really just, that's the whole thing, right? She's bound by her fears. And when she finally opens the box and confronts them, she realizes that it's not so scary.
It's not Pandora's box. It's a gift from her mother that she should treasure.
Yeah. This is a good route, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
It was a good route, right? The video does bring up another thing that I think we forgot to talk about, the whole Nipuha Nipera thing, which is, if you see the reactions of Mio and Kanata and Haruka, they all misinterpret the whole thing, I think.
Well, kind of. Actually,
this might be a problem with the writer. I don't know.
Well, yes,
yeah,
I do think that Shiroki did mess up a little bit on her research, but overall she actually did pretty well. Basically, I think there's 5 characters in total who kind of address this, and some of them have different interpretations.
Right.
Well, basically, Nipuha Nipera is a charm that you cast onto someone who is about to set out to do something important. It was originally a charm meant for hunters who were setting out on a hunt, and basically what it means is that you tell the hunter that you wish for them to not succeed in their hunt, for them to not catch prey, not to not catch any prey that has feathers and no prey that has fluff. The thought behind this is the following. According to Russian, well, not exactly Russian, but let's just call it that. According to this superstition, if you wish someone good, you're very likely to jinx them.
Right.
Therefore, you're supposed to wish for the opposite of what you want to wish for.
I guess it's kind of like break a leg.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is an important part of this ritual, though, that isn't enacted in the root.
Right. Actually, when the charm is cast on you, when the other person tells you "ni pucha ni pera," you're supposed to answer with "k chortu," which means "to hell with that" or "to hell" or "go to hell."
I don't care what you think. I'm gonna catch it anyway.
Right,
Yeah.
and
Screw you.
right, and that kind of didn't happen. I don't think that was intentional. I actually think it's just Shiroki just messed up on her research.
Oh.
Unless we interpret it that this is like Kud basically admitting self-destruction.
Actually,
That's kind of how Kanata interprets it. Kanata's interpretation of that phrasing
It's
is extremely
pretty dark.
Ugh. It's like
right.
kind of like you'll go to hell without fur or feathers. And I'm like, oh my god, bro.
Right. And also that the Russian concept of happiness is exactly that you drop
what?
to hell with nothing on you.
Oh my god, what?
It
Yeah,
is
I
strange,
think-
and I don't actually understand it. I
Oh my god.
do think
I
she
think-
kind of got the wrong idea.
I think it's Kanata's own interpretation, maybe because of her own personal experiences. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also Haruka pointed out that what Kud said when she said goodbye to Riki, because what she said was not a normal goodbye. It was прощайте, which means farewell. It's something you say. It's something you say when you know you're not going to meet,
Sayonara.
although
Yeah.
although you'd like to. And they argue that at that point in time, Kud was also saying the opposite of what she wished for. And that means
right.
by saying farewell, she expressed her wish to actually meet Riki again.
All the in-Soviet Russia jokes are just like writing themselves right now.
Oh. Only in Soviet Russia where you say the opposite of what you really mean.
Right.
Anyway, I think it connects like to what her mom wished for Kud, because that was like the last line in the video, the last thing we see for her mom. So like she was wishing Kud the best, and I think that's one thing that Kud may have forgotten, and she shouldn't have forgotten. Like, despite her mom being distant, despite her mom being the perfect woman, she wanted the best for her child, and she just wanted her child to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
Yay.
It was a sweet way to end the story. I'm glad they did include that epilogue to it. So I hope this podcast has given people a bit more to think about with regards to this route, because I know this is often people are very dismissive of this route. And you know, I get like the pacing things and the moe moe might be a bit too much. There is a lot of it. I found myself skipping through some of it just really quickly, just like get on with it. But that said, what this route does have to offer in terms of a message, I think, is really solid, and it's a simple message, really. Like all the stuff about the conflict and stuff, it's like that might be like a secondary layer of things, like the whole talk about sanctuary and struggling against things we can't control. That's one thing, but I don't think that's the main message. The main message is definitely a simple story of a girl fighting against her own insecurities and fears. And simple stories, told in such a fantastical way. Like, I think that's what Key's
key.
best at. Yeah.
Yep. That's key in a nutshell. That's why we love it.
So yeah, I'm quite happy with this podcast. I think we got some really good discussion happening. Thank you so much to Naoki Saten, who, by the way, is our MVP for this route. Congratulations, sir.
Yay!
I didn't doubt that. Like, there are good posts in the forum, but I had no doubt that that Naoki had absolutely the best. Like, you showed the most effort. You brought discussion in the way that I feel was in the right direction. So, thank you.
Well, I'm glad that I'm not just seen as some crazy guy who gets super defensive.
Yeah.
Because
I still see you like that.
I admit I get salty really fast when it comes to Code, because for one, it's my favorite refrain route, and second, I did feel the same pain as Code.
Yeah.
Therefore, it every time there's like superficial criticism, I do feel like it's a little bit personal.
Oh. Always try to understand.
That's right. I have the honor of making the shoutouts to some valuable forum posts throughout this route discussion. So first of all, we got Starfish Bender, who right away pointed out that the actual crux of the story was this line in the epilogue, the thing that Kud's mom said, that she's supposed to find something more important than yourself. I'd like to thank Ganesh Swami and also Macklemore for keeping the discussion alive for several days. Then we have a post by Aizen Kobu, who pointed out a lot of different things.
That was a good post, by the way. Thanks, Aizen.
Right.
But yeah, thanks to all the forum posters. Again, Starfish Bender, Bread, Zasante, me, Ganesh Swami.
Don't thank yourself. How
you
vain.
can cut that out. I'm just reading.
How?
I'll repeat that so you have an easier time. Thanks again to all the
That's
forum
funny.
posters. Starfish. Thanks again to all the forum posters for their contributions. Starfish Bender, Bread, Zasante, Ganesh Swami, Aizen Kobu, Helios Alpha, Black Hayate, and of course our MVP, Naoki Sato. Pachi, 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 pachi.
And fan art. Do we have fan art too?
Oh yes, we do have fan art. One submission for fan art during the Little Busters hype ban, where we tried to get more fan art from Alinoshka Art on Twitter. I guess we'll put that on the podcast. Also, shout outs to Macklemore, who was very good in pushing the discussion. I forgot. My eyes glance over your name. I'm sorry. I guess the next podcast will be the big one, right? Refrain?
Yeah, so next
Rin
up
2
we've
Refrain.
got the Rin 2 and Refrain podcast. That's going to be a massive one. I'm not expecting it to be any shorter than 3 hours, probably.
Oh my god.
And after that, we're also planning on doing a relook, like a revisit podcast where we go back to all the routes after having finished Refrain. So that'll be another interesting one as well to look forward to. But yeah, this is where we stand after having completed all of the Heron routes. Man, only the climax and the EX routes await. I'm very excited to dive into them once more. So,
Yeah.
Thanks to everybody who's been tuning into these podcasts. Thanks to everybody joining me today, Grooven, Naoki, and Pepe.
Yes.
It's been a joy. Hopefully we'll have you on for...
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Hopefully we'll have you on for more
It's been an
podcasts
honor
in
as
the
always.
coming future. And yeah, so I guess with that, we'll be signing out. So, see you in Refrain, everybody.
See you later, Nano desu.
See you later.
Later.